Welcome to another episode of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. And the executive producer of the show is the one and only Rob McConnell. Folks, I'd like to thank you for tuning in once again. I always love doing this show and talking about issues, of course. And based on your feedback, I really appreciate it. It's been overwhelmingly positive. And since I am human, despite what my critics say, I always appreciate your comments one way or another. If you think I've done something wrong, let me know. If I make mistakes, I'm happy to correct them. I don't have an ego in all of this. Okay, so today we've got a show that is kind of diverse, meaning we're going to talk about several different subjects. Let's start with the ridiculous and inexcusable circus known as the United States government and the way that they try to handle budgets and decide instead they want to play dirty politics and shut down. Well, depending on whom you ask, because America is extremely polarized, it's probably been as polarized as since the time of the Civil War. Thankfully, nobody's shooting. Look at the issue of the budget shutdown here. If you believe the Democrats, it's not their fault. Now, I expect that excuse from Democrats because it's never their fault. It's always someone else's fault. The Democrats like to believe that they're perfect and pure and always have your interests in mind, which is nonsense, but that's their shtick. The Republicans say it's not their fault either. Again, same comment. They believe they're always working on behalf of your interests, and while that's not always true either, we are stuck with the two parties as long as the American people refuse to do anything to solve the two-party stagnation that has continues to implode the great country of the United States of America. So, back at the Democrats, you have to remember here that a few days later, as in after the weekend passed when the government was shut down, suddenly the Democrats were like, okay, fine, we'll go along with this. And the reason the Democrats said that they refused to support the initial funding package that was supposed to be passed and was agreed to in principle was because they weren't getting the deal they wanted on handling immigrants. And, of course, the Democrats love to pander to the immigrant base of their party because it's votes, vote bank politics, as they would say in India. And the Republicans, of course, have to walk a fine line regarding immigrants because if they appear to come across as too hard and some of those immigrants end up voting, they're going to vote overwhelmingly, about 80% of them do anyway, for Democrats. But what is interesting is when Donald Trump was elected president, just enough immigrants voted for Trump, and that means they voted against Hillary Clinton. And I'll give you one example of a demographic group who did this: Cubans. In other words, a lot of Americans who are either naive or they're racists, let's be honest, they like to dismiss Latinos as being all some homogenous group, like they're all the same. You know, if you believe in the racist claim that, you know, Mexicans are lazy or whatever, which is not true. It's wrong to paint any group with such a broad brush. It is racism. There is a distinct difference between people from Mexico versus, of course, from Cuba. So a lot of Cubans who have escaped the hellhole known as Communist Cuba, again, created under a former communist dictator Fidel Castro, who thankfully, in my opinion, I'm glad he's dead. I don't have any sympathy for any communist dictator at all. They don't like illegals in the country. They're very pro-American, and a lot of them support the Republicans because they think that's what the Republicans stand for, patriotism. They don't like the Democrats because they think that the Democrats are too la-la left-wing liberal. That's very different from, say, the West Coast in California, which is known as la-la liberal land. And, of course, California still can't figure out what it wants to be when it grows up, if ever. I predict it won't. In fact, you have entire counties who want to succeed from California because they're tired of the so-called tyranny in our democracy, and that's ridiculous. There isn't tyranny. These guys aren't suffering. It's just a group of liberals who want their own utopian idea of paradise, their own state, and because they don't agree with other people in California, they'd rather not participate in trying to find a consensus and work together in a thing called unity. Duh, hello. Instead, they just want to go off and form their own unicorn-type nation, and there will be a chicken in every pot and peace forever. In fact, some of these morons, and I have to call them that from a scientific standpoint, who think that they can just break away and start their own state, they've even said they don't even need a military. Can you believe they're that out to lunch? Yes, they are. Anyway, I predict the secession movement will fail. That's my prediction. However, I'm not an expert on this thing. I always tell people I'm not psychic. That's just my reading of what I think are the facts. So getting back to the issue of the government shutdown, the government did shut down for a few days, and it happened to occur. I don't believe this is a coincidence for 1 minute. There's no such thing as coincidences. There is instead always cause and effect. It occurred over the 1-year anniversary of Trump's being sworn into office. Gee, how timely for the Democrats. And, of course, women took to the streets and protested again 1 year later over the Trump administration and remarks that Trump had said about women in general, about grabbing their private parts about 11 or 12 years ago. They still think that's fair play. And now some of these Trump haters are all upset over the allegations or the revelations recently that Trump, when he was a private citizen, he had not even announced that he was running for president, purportedly had an affair or one-night stand or whatever with a prostitute. And, of course, she's been talking here and there. And she was allegedly paid over $100,000 to basically keep it confidential, and that hasn't really happened. But, you know, these same people that are upset over Trump having a extramarital affair, it's no secret that he's done that. In fact, Trump's wife, when he was running for president, openly talked about that. I read those interviews in some different publications, and of course they almost divorced over it. That's understandable. But she has forgiven him, and according to her, he's remained faithful since then. Now, what they do in their own private marriage and their life is their business. Let's be clear. There's a difference between private life and public life, of course. Public life being when you serve the people who put you into office when you are a politician. What I find hypocritical, however, and inexcusable, but predictable, is that the same Trump haters, who many of which are pro-Clinton, they support Hillary and Bill Clinton, where were they years ago when Bill Clinton, when he was president, not when he was a private citizen, but when he was president, was busy being serviced sexually by Monica Lewinsky in the Oval Office of the White House? And you can read the actual lurid transcripts of some of the kinkiness that was going on between them. But here is the President of the United States, while he's at work, supposedly working on behalf of the free world and the American people who put him into power. He's having sex with an intern. He's married. Where were they? They weren't outraged. They said, oh, what Clinton does in his private life is his own business. And yes, they're right about that. But this wasn't his private life when he's doing this on taxpayer money. We don't elect politicians to have sex in their offices during working hours. If they want to have sex with whomever, let them do it in their private time. That's not what happened with Clinton. He was impeached for lying about it, okay? That doesn't seem to bother them at all that he lied. And yet we're supposed to believe that he's a victim? No, he's a victim of his own stupidity and carelessness. To show you how reckless Bill Clinton was, he even left phone sex messages on Monica Lewinsky's voicemail. And Israel's Mossad recorded those, had a meeting with Clinton in secrecy and said, look, we've got this recording of you. How do you want to handle it? And Clinton himself later held a press conference and admitted that a foreign power, he didn't identify Israel by name, but we now know years later it was Israel and the Mossad. They're the ones. Clinton had admitted again that foreign power had recorded those conversations, and he started to admit that, yeah, the story was true and that he was stupid for doing this and all that other stuff. And then, of course, he went on his so-called apology tour, which was just, going through the motions. He wasn't really sincerely sorry, in my opinion. Maybe he was sorry he got caught, but Bill Clinton will always be Bill Clinton. So there is a double standard here. They attack Trump for saying something he said 11 or 12 years ago. They attack him for an affair he apparently has had that his wife talked about before he ran for president, before he became a candidate. He was a private citizen. And yet these same people who are just claiming they're just morally outraged and offended, it doesn't bother them when their own president, on taxpayer time and money, using taxpayer resources, is busy having an affair with a young intern and doing kinky stuff in the White House when he's supposed to be serving the American people and helping defend the so-called free world. So when you have hypocrisy like that, is it any wonder that the United States as a country is really in serious trouble? Meaning it was polarized many years ago, ever since Al Gore lost the presidency to George W. Bush. And I remember that because I had just left the United States. I had moved to Europe. And I remember many of my Czech friends and friends in Europe asking me about how can a person get more votes and still lose? Shouldn't they win? And I agree that majority should win. On the other hand, the problem with that type of system is that it gives undue power, disproportionate power, to states like New York and California because of their huge numbers of population, also Texas and Florida. It essentially would negate the voting power of smaller states like Rhode Island and Connecticut. And I admit I don't have an alternative for the electoral system. I just don't have one. We'll be back after this commercial break.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Gwilda Wiyaka's latest book, The Science of Magic, Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is the first book in a series based on her writings that open every episode of the Science of Magic radio show. Drawing on the subject matter of each guest, and armed with over 40 years' experience in shamanism, 35 years in alternative health, and degrees in psychology and religious studies, Gwilda introduces relevant and leading-edge information that supports spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Rich with wisdom and inspirational quotes packaged in digestible segments, this is a book that will pull you from cover to cover. It will also serve as a daily inspirational reading for years to come. The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1 is available at our website, tsompublications.com, amazon.com, and wherever fine books are sold. Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X-Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X-Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Welcome back to segment 2 here on Cal's Corner radio show here in the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. And again, the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. So before the commercial break, we were talking about the electoral system. It's kind of funny because it seems that, to me, in my observation of people who have talked about it in this last election, because Hillary lost, even though she got a lot more votes than Donald Trump did, a couple of million votes more apparently. There are people who say, well, we need to abolish the electoral system. And I have asked everyone I've been involved with in these conversations, I've said, okay, fine. What will you replace it with? They say, well, simple, majority rules. And then I ask them the question, okay, but what happens to the smaller states? They don't have an answer. See, that's the point of the Electoral College system, is to balance and try to prevent a disproportionate number of people who live in very populated states like California, New York, Florida, and Texas from essentially controlling the whole country. Because if the electoral system was not there, we might as well call ourselves the United States of Texas, California, New York, and Florida, because all the other states combined wouldn't matter, because it would be majority rules and that's it. So I have told people who are angry over the fact that their pet politician lost, Queen Hillary in this case, get over it, and why don't you try to do something productive and come up with a system that still gets you the protections to keep it fair that you can replace the Electoral College system with. And guess what they do? Nothing, because they haven't come up with anything. Doesn't seem to be anything. Now, when I've been asked that question, well, what would you do? You know, I used to believe that the answer was very simple, that, yeah, we should be majority rules. That was many, many years ago, last century. But in my opinion, I was naive and I hadn't thought the issue through. I also don't profess to be an expert on it. And when I look at the demographics of how Trump won the election, he won it because Hillary lost it. She made a point to do stupid things, like she never campaigned in the state of Wisconsin, ever. And she had never won that state. She lost it to Barack Obama when she ran for president the first time. She lost it to Bernie Sanders, even when she essentially had the nomination locked up for her party. That takes special talent. And then, of course, she lost it to Trump, and she didn't bother campaigning there. You would think that, you know, gee, if I know I have to win a state, I really should go there and try to win it rather than just ignore it. But, you know, that's Hillary Clinton for you. And yet her proponents, and Hillary likes to stress how she's such a qualified candidate and makes the best decisions. Well, my answer to that is look at Syria. That's real sign of her genius. Anyway, so as I've told people, I support the EC system only because I don't know of any other way to do it. And I'm not an expert on this stuff. Maybe somebody someday will come up with something better. But until they do, the lesson that the Democrats must learn, and they're not, they're Democrats. That's why I call them dumbocrats a lot of times, because they do dumb things, and I think that's a scientifically accurate explanation. When you look at that party, it is so schizophrenic. It's like a bunch of Keystone cops. They don't know what they want to be when they grow up. You've got Perez, who heads the party. He's Obama's sock puppet. You've got the Obama Democrats, who don't really like the Clinton Democrats. They've just had a tough love relationship. Then you've got the Clinton holdovers, because Hillary herself is just keeping involved enough so that if she sees another opportunity to run for president one more time, despite the fact that the American people have rejected her twice now, okay, based on our system, she still wants that power because that's what it's about. And I happen to know somebody who grew up with the Clintons, was best friends with Bill Clinton's brother, and he's told me all kinds of stuff, and he's a wonderful gentleman. He's never lied, and I also worked with him as a colleague for years. We're still in touch, and he told me the truth many years ago that there was a deal made between Bill and Hillary Clinton that basically once he finished being president, that it would be her turn, and that was the deal they made. And In exchange for that, she wouldn't divorce Bill Clinton, and this was the settlement that he says that they came to, and others have since then, after the Monica Lewinsky scandal. I'll never forget one time when I was told this. I didn't believe it. I was skeptical. And what happened is I was told that basically a deal had been cut, that what would happen is Hillary Clinton, after Bill was out of the White House, they would carpet bag it off to New York, do what Robert Kennedy did in the 60s, run for Senate. The party would engineer that she would have no serious opponent. And then what would happen is that she would put in just enough time to claim some sort of pseudo-credibility, at least to fool the gullible who vote. And then she would run for president, and that running for president was always her real objective. And she's not the first politician to do that. There are others who go through the motions when their heart and mind are always in the White House, of course. Barack Obama is a fine example. The reason he ran for president is because he complained one day, believe it or not, to then Senator Harry Reid that he was bored. Now, Obama had no serious competitor when he ran for Senate. His Republican opponent had dropped out due to a scandal that was leaked to the media by the Democrats, of course, and that would be Ryan, the politician who resigned in disgrace. And then what happened is from the race. And then what happened is Obama, 2 years into being a senator, said he was bored. So Harry Reid jokingly told him, well, why don't you run for president then if you're so bored? And Obama did, and he won. He beat Hillary. And the rest is history, as they say. And then you have another faction of the Democrats, which are the Bernie Sanders supporters, the liberals. And then you have a fourth area where they don't even know what they want to be when they grow up. It's hard to give them a single label. So the Democrats are still struggling with that. They still engage in everything from race baiting to pandering politics. And it just doesn't work. If you ask the Democrats what they stand for economically and ask for a detailed plan, you ain't going to get one. If you ask 4 Democrats for ideas, you'll get 7 of them. That's just the way they are. Now, people attack me for being pro-Republican or pro-Trump every time I raise a criticism of the Democrats. That's how stupid and polarized this country has become. I remember when I was growing up that if I said I didn't like something, that does not automatically mean that I'm a supporter of the exact opposite. Those days are gone. If you dare criticize Hillary Clinton, it must be because you're a right-winger or a Republican or pro-Trump, even though you aren't. In my case, I'm not. For the record, for the umpteenth bazillion time, I have never voted Republican. I do not support the Republicans. I often call them Rethuglicans because, in my opinion, they do things to hurt ordinary people, not just Americans, but people as human beings. I don't like it when they cut off free or inexpensive birth control for people. I think responsible birth control is a responsible thing to do. I don't think the Bible belongs in the classroom on an equal basis with evolution. One is science, the other is faith, okay? I don't believe that you should be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance in class if you don't want to. I also don't believe you're unpatriotic if you choose not to say it. It's an individual choice. I don't believe that the government belongs in the bedroom. And if 2 people of the same sex want to live their lives happy with each other and they're in love, let them do it. I don't think it should be criminalized. So I am against the right-wing extremist mindset, the conservative mindset. In my opinion, the term conservative is an oxymoron. What it really means is that you're fossilized in your thinking. You don't consider alternatives. You don't adapt to change. You don't even want to hear it. You're what I call a Stone Age thinker. And having been to 27 countries now in my short life, I can tell you I've seen plenty of examples of genuine Stone Age thinking in different countries, especially in countries like India. And it really hurts more than it harms. In fact, it's always wrong, and it has never been right. So, on the issue of our system and this fighting over the budget and jockeying for position and agreeing to come to a compromise and then pulling out, now the latest round in this circus is courtesy of Chuck Schumer, of course. He's now saying that he's going to he has withdrawn from the table support for Trump's wall, and now they're going to go back and battle each other again. And they're all doing things that they promised the American people they never would, that they used to criticize as being wrong when they were running for office or when their opponents would do it. Again, it is pure hypocrisy. It continues to divide the country. It continues to fuel further polarization. And unfortunately, the United States of America is increasingly becoming the disunited States of America. And there's no excuse for that. I'm reminded of what the famed President Abraham Lincoln essentially said when he was alive before he was murdered by an assassin, John Wilkes Booth. He said that America will never be defeated from the outside, but that it could very well be defeated from the inside. And he's right about that. Nobody can defeat the U.S. militarily. If Russia were to attack, it would be a nuclear exchange. The whole planet would lose. But the United States is perfectly capable of imploding and is $20 trillion in debt. And we have only two parties to thank for this inexcusable, precarious situation, which is not a sustainable path going forward. And these two entities are belovingly known as the Republicans and the Democrats. I have said since the late 1990s that Americans need a viable third-party alternative, but I wasn't dumb enough to think it would happen overnight. In fact, I don't think it'll happen at this rate in my life, maybe someday. But what we have now isn't working, and it is arguable insanity to keep doing the same stupid things over and over when we know they're going to fail, and yet we continue doing it, getting stuck in a loop. And that is yet another example of just Stone Age thinking. Stone Age meaning fossilized, doesn't mean literally millions of years ago. It simply means stuck in a loop and refusing to do what's right and making the changes that we must. Okay, we'll be back after this commercial break for segment 3.
Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back to segment 3 of Kal's Corner radio show here on the Exxon Broadcast Network. Once again, my name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. Okay, folks, we're talking about, again, the disunited states of America, or at least the extreme polarization. We've talked about the circus regarding the government shutdown, the fact that Chuck Schumer, who I think he's another, just another government bozo who misrepresents people, and meaning he isn't doing things for the best interests of the United States as he should. I have a higher standard of behavior and ethics than he seems to exhibit. And then we talked about Bill Clinton. We talked about the hypocrisy over the charge against Trump having an affair, blah, blah, blah. So, again, this is what's going on in the U.S. Let's talk about the other major circus going on, which, again, is very disgraceful. Unfortunately, fortunately, at least so we know the truth, this will play out over the next several months, and we'll find out where the truth ultimately lies. Now, the subject here concerns the alleged collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, the collusion that would be illegal if it really happened. I'm going to go on record again, as I've said in previous episodes here, and as well as before this show was broadcasting here on this network. I'm going to go on record as saying that by the time all these investigations are done, there will not be any collusion that was found. And when I say that, let me be very clear here. What I mean is Donald Trump cutting a deal with Vladimir Putin to try to rig the election. I don't think it happened. The reason I don't think it happened is because if the evidence existed that it really did, it would have been found by now. This is because we spy on Russia all the time. We spy on Ukraine. We spy on everybody, okay? The NSA, that's their job. They do it. The CIA does it. Other intelligence agencies spy on each other, including us. And this could not have been kept a secret, even at the highest levels. Somebody would have said something, because to have such a conspiracy of collusion would have required the participation of many different people. And we know that Donald Trump, I'm one of the people who has written about this fairly frequently and certainly extensively in the articles. We know that Donald Trump was spied on by the U.S. government and foreign intelligence agencies for decades. Anytime a person who is very rich starts dealing with people overseas, especially in the Russian sphere of influence, for lack of a better term, or say that part of the world, this would include the former republics of the Soviet Union like Kazakhstan, or satellite states like or countries like Ukraine, they're going to be spied on. They're going to be spied on by the Germans, the British, the Canadians, the Polish, you name it. Even the Latvians, Lithuanians, and Estonians, and Finland, they've all provided intelligence on Trump and some of Trump's associates like Paul Manafort. And anytime you're a lobbyist for foreign dictators like Ferdinand Marcos or Vladimir Putin's sock puppet, who used to be the former president of Ukraine, who was ousted in the popular uprising, Manafort helped get him elected. Of course, you're going to be under the radar of the intelligence community, as well as the intelligence community of that country as well, who doesn't have that individual as their president yet until he wins the election. And they're going to share all this data. So the idea that all of this could be going on when there are literally at least 1,000 people whose jobs are to monitor this stuff among all the different intelligence agencies, to believe that they would not know or pick up anything is just beyond delusional. The science will find evidence that unicorns exist before the other's a possibility, which means it's not possible and it's not credible. And that's why I reported many months ago, last year I think it was, that when it was last year, in Daily World newspaper, that when the British government denied that they had been spying on Trump, they were lying. And they were lying. They later admitted, after one of the guys in charge of overseeing those efforts was conveniently resigned, that, they did spy on Trump. So there is truth to the idea that there has been a conspiracy against Trump becoming president of the United States. That conspiracy likely exists for a couple of reasons, one of which is Trump is an outsider. He is a Republican because he didn't want to run on the Democratic ticket. He's also been friendly to Democrats in the past, meaning he, again, didn't want to run the Democrat side, so he ran on the Republican side. But he's an outsider. He's not beholden to anybody. As far as the good old boy network that usually picks a candidate or at least grooms them to be president or senator or congressman, once you join the fraternity known as the Democrats and the Republicans. And he's also very unorthodox, and a lot of people just don't like him. They don't like him when he's very blunt. They don't like him when he tells the truth on things, and they certainly don't like him when he lies, and he does lie a lot. And he kind of shoots from the hips. I said, and my stance remains, that I didn't support Trump because I didn't think he was qualified to be president. I said specifically in a previous radio show that was broadcast in Daily World from India, as well as in a long article, a couple of them, that he doesn't have the temperament, and that's been proven to be true. But on the other hand, he has done some things he deserves to have credit for. And you can look those up if you're not biased. He's also done things that are wrong, as the recent article that was published last week proves, quoting Trump. He has been guilty regarding racist issues. He has settled with the Justice Department on some of that when the Trump Management Corporation was denying renting to people who were black or Hispanic. They had to then settle out of court, admitted no wrongdoing, which is standard. And then, of course, he was penalized, paid a $200,000 fine from the state of New Jersey via their oversight boards for casinos there, because he had moved a black person away from a table because a high-rolling gambler who would lose his money to the house didn't want blacks handling the cards. And then Trump said he'd rather have Jews count his money than black people because black people are lazy. It's not their fault. These are all quotes you can look up that Donald Trump said. And that, of course, is racism. Racism being defined that when you stereotype somebody and say, well, all blacks are lazy, all Jews are greedy, all Catholics molest little children, that's racism, okay? The definition of racism has changed a little bit here and there, but at the core, that's essentially it. So we have this issue going on, and now there's a controversy that has exploded over the fact that Peter Strzok, who was the chief of the counter-espionage section during the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of a personal email server, Strzok he's been removed by the special counsel Robert Mueller because some emails have surfaced, or rather some text messages via his smartphone, where he is obviously biased and has said things against Trump, and he seems to be in the tank for Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read you a quote from one of the text messages. You can find them on the internet. They're now being released, huge batches of them. And basically, this message occurred from Strzok when he was asked about joining Mueller's investigation into the charge that Trump may have colluded with Russia to rig the election. So he wrote, quote, "You and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part," now this means to join Mueller's team, "because of my gut sense and concern that there's no big there, unquote. So here is the same guy, Strzok, who called Trump an idiot, quote unquote, on August 15th when he texted that Hillary was going to win the election, and he's stunned that Ted Cruz has quit, and that then in shock, as much of America was when Trump actually beat Hillary, and he's saying, I don't know if I really want to join this investigation because there's nothing there. My gut feeling tells me there's nothing there. But yet he joined the investigation anyway, and then was kicked off of it, which was the right thing to do, to remove him, because you can argue that he was biased. In fact, his text messages are so biased against Trump and so pro-Hillary. They reek of a cover-up and this not being fair and impartial, that they may jeopardize Mueller's entire investigation and get it stopped or shut down. And then what do? Do you pick someone else to lead it and pick up the ball? Probably not at this point. Now, we have to separate the issue of Trump colluding with the Russians from the situation of Paul Manafort, who's been accused and formally indicted now for money laundering. That's a separate issue. And we must remember that Manafort did not work for Trump at that time. He was not involved in his campaign. It's not surprising money laundering happened, because when you look at the Kazakhstanis, the Ukrainians, Putin, and anybody who's involved in those circles, you're going to have money laundering, because that's what they do. And that is historically true based on convictions that have been handed down around the world for such behavior. So it's no surprise there, okay? And it is no surprise that money laundering has happened in Trump Tower. There have been tenants in Trump Tower who, without the knowledge of Donald Trump, let's be clear, have engaged in money laundering, and that's a matter of public record, and people have been convicted for that. Well, a landlord may not know everything that's going on. They're not psychic. That doesn't mean the landlord is guilty. And in the case of Trump, you had Ukrainians and Russians doing money laundering. They rented offices from his properties. That does not prove that Trump knew about it, and it does not prove that he was involved. And if Trump was guilty and involved in all of this, you would like to think that the government by now would have nailed him, because they've been spying on him for years, but they didn't. So that should tell you that the case for Russian collusion is pathetically weak. We'll be back after this commercial break.
Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings, slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of Cal's Corner Radio here on X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. And once again, the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Well, we're in the fourth segment here, the final stretch. As I have said a few times before, for me at least, time flies very fast when I'm doing the show. Hopefully it goes by quickly for you too. Otherwise, that would mean you're not having a good time. And, of course, I want you to have a good time. So, as we talked about, these text messages now, thousands of them apparently, are coming out from Peter Strzok. He's now been transferred within the FBI to the Human Resources Department, which means he's being punished. Now, it remains to be seen whether further action will be taken against him. But as the worm turns, this thing continues to get worse, and over time, we will eventually know the truth. And regardless of what that truth proves, we must not reject it. We have a right to question things, but not reject truth. It doesn't matter what the subject is. So hopefully we'll find out the truth. One area that's going to be very interesting is apparently there's about 6 months worth of messages missing, and this happens to be during the time when members of the Obama administration, such as Samantha Powers, were arguably abusing their authority and trying to get intelligence to use against Donald Trump and to try to nail him for things that they thought he might be doing, but it turns out he didn't do them, at least based on the evidence so far. And if they've abused their authority, that's wrong. It's criminal, actually. But, of course, nobody does anything. And this has happened before in the Obama administration. Not only has James Clapper, the former director of National Intelligence, he's actually outright lied under oath. And he later apologized for that. But did he go to prison for it? Was he sanctioned? Was he fired over it? No. You see, this is where claims of deep state come into power. And if you look historically at agencies like CIA and NSA, they're hardly ever held accountable, especially the NSA. Because at the end of the day, what can you do? Do you shut them down to penalize them? No, because if you do that, then you jeopardize the safety and security, potentially, of the United States and other countries as well, because many countries depend on the intelligence gathered from the United States to help them. They can't afford and don't have the technology that we do, and that's why we have these sharing agreements with many different countries, because it's the best way to get things done. So it's a very fine line to walk. And we now know that this claim, oh, please trust us, doesn't work anymore because they violated the trust. They have broken the laws. But when the, foxes are guarding the hen house, it's not surprising that a couple hens or chickens disappear. Now let's switch to another issue real quickly, and this is the gay rights movement and what's been going on with that. I promised last week that we would talk about some of this, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, I will tell you that having worked at Apple for many years, you may remember that Apple, the world's largest company now and the most successful in the history of the human race, they're about to reach a $1 trillion market cap, which is just incredible. You remember their logo used to be 6 different colors in the shape of an apple with a bite out of it. And those colors would be green, yellow, orange, red, purple, blue. And Steve Jobs had agreed to that logo. He liked it because it was supposed to signify the different colors that the monitors could display back then, that they were color. The reason those colors were chosen had nothing to do with trying to be inclusive of everyone. It was trying to be the opposite of, say, Big Blue or IBM, where their logo was just blue, and their logo was 3 letters, IBM. So when I first saw the gay flag with its colors, which are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and light purple, it reminded me of the Apple logo plus a few extra colors, because most of the colors in the original Apple logo are used in the gay flag. So I talked to some people who were gay, and I said, what do these colors mean? I don't understand it. And they said, this is to show the world that we're inclusive of everybody. Now, I had to shake my head over that, because while it's a nice idea, I don't think it translates logically, and I'll tell you why. Look at the colors. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, light purple. Now, do you know any red people? Well, you might say Native American Indians, so-called Reds. But if you go there and say that, aren't you being racist? Depends on who you ask. Do you know any people who are orange? Well, maybe Oompa Loompas, but they don't exist from the movie Willy Wonka. Do you know yellow people? Well, maybe you say yellow because you refer to the Chinese or the Japanese or the so-called yellow race. But aren't you being racist when you say that? Do you know any green people? Well, maybe Martians, assuming there are Martians, little green men. But aren't you being racist to them if they really exist? Even Vulcans, they have green blood, but they don't exist. They're not green. What about blue? Do you know any blue people other than people who are sad, and blue is a metaphor for people? Do you know any purple people? Well, they're supposed to be purple people eaters, if you believe the song from, what was it, 60s or something. And light purple? No. So, for a flag that is supposed to be inclusive, to represent people across the spectrum, assuming the colors have any correlation to a race or a type of people, most of these colors don't match any life forms on the planet. Certainly people, they don't. If you think again, yellow refers to Japanese or Chinese. I've met plenty of Japanese and Chinese, and they don't look yellow to me. Maybe I'm colorblind, but they're not yellow. Just like Indians aren't red. They're dark skinned, but they're not red unless they go get a sunburn. So the point is, it makes no logical sense to me. And notice that there's no black and no white on the flag. White people exist. That's what we call them. And, of course, black people, that's what we call Africans, right? Blacks. They're not on the flag. So how can you be inclusive if you don't have those colors? Makes no sense to me. Well, I'm not the only one, it turns out, who feels this way. It turns out that in June of 2017, there has been an internal rupture within the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual movement. Transsexual, not transactional, sorry. It concerns the issue of the colors of the flag. They think they're wrong. So now somebody has come up with a new design for the flag, which is supposed to be all-inclusive. And let me tell you what colors are on it. The first color at the very top is black. So supposedly that represents black people. The second color is brown. That's supposed to represent brown people. Now, brown people could be Latinos. Who knows? You have to ask people who think that way. The third color is red. I guess that means Native American Indians, again, to further talk about or advocate the racist stereotype. But then the rest of the colors are rather curious. Orange, there's no orange people again, unless, again, you want to talk about imaginary Oompa Loompas. Then there's yellow. I guess that's supposed to represent the Asian race, but again, that's racist. Then there's green. Well, there are no green people, unless you believe in little green men, but again, that would be racist. Then there's blue. There's no blue people. And then there's purple. There's no purple people. So the people within the LG movement, LGBT, they're upset over the old version of the flag because it's not inclusive enough. And then what they do is they propose this new design. And yeah, they added a black and a brown color and dropped, a couple others. But there's no white. It's like saying we're not going to include white people, and that's racist. So I find this whole thing to be just a bad joke, People have so much time on their hands doing unimportant things that they're arguing over choosing the right colors to be inclusive of everybody, only to make a point to be exclusive of white people, or if you believe in the first version of this flag, exclusive of black people and white people. And then the very idea that you would assign a color to a race, that's racism. That's stereotyping. You know, I guarantee you that I have met plenty of people in my travels in 27 countries that you look at them cosmetically, you look at the color of their skin, and you think they're one race, but they're really another. And let me give you a real example here. My Indian friends can absolutely relate to this because many of them have this genetic trait. If you look at India, when you're in the northern state of Punjab, which lived there for 7 years, you'll see that Indians are either light-skinned or they're dark-skinned, okay? Very rarely do you see many of them in between. Well, there's a reason for that. It turns out that the lighter-skinned Indians most likely have some Greek in them because Alexander the Great's troops marched through there centuries ago, a long time ago, bred or mixed with Indians, usually due to rape, let's be blunt about it, and that produced offspring who have lighter skins. And Indians are so obsessed with the fair white skin that when you go into some of these stores, you've got entire aisles full of products that will make dark skin white, that will change you like Michael Jackson changed himself when he dyed his skin. In fact, real quickly, I remember one time I went into a store and I asked the lady where bleach was because I wanted to clean the floor. Well, she immediately took me over to this aisle and she says, right here. And I'm looking in front of me at all these skin bleaching products. And I asked her, I said, do I look like I need to bleach my skin? I'm already Agora. I'm already white, thank you. I'm talking about bleach to clean your floor. It was kind of funny. We're laughing at that. It was cute. But that's how obsessed they are. And I remember I was at a beauty contest one time, and one of the organizers of that conference told the Indian women, don't make your hair light, be Indian, make it black. So this whole thing is ridiculous, and what we see now is the movement trying to infiltrate even the people. If you look at the latest Thor movie, you see the gay flag in there in the background in one scene. And I'm sorry, folks, that does not belong in the movie. Leave the kids alone. If you want to be in a...
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.